Thanks so much to all my patrons. Join now to help support the channel and help pick the books that I review. Link in the description. And I am done. Okay, so I just got done reading Daughter of the Empire. This is the first book in the Empire trilogy by Raymond Feist and Janny Wurts. And I want to give you my unedited thoughts on finishing this book, which was literally just right now. So this thing is amazing. Yeah, I love this. Easy 5 out of 5 stars. It's such a Matt book. I don't know that there's like one definitive like, oh, Matt, I like these exact kind of books, but there's different types of books that are gonna be hits for me. And, you know, fantasy political thrillers are right up my alley. And I feel like I don't read enough of them. I don't know enough of them because the ones I have read, I usually love. But this one takes the cake, is one of, if not the best in that subgenre of fantasy that I've ever read. Just truly wonderful. Now, I have been exposed both to Raymond Feist and Janny Wurts separately before this, them coming together to co-write this book. I had read the first, sub-series of the Rift War saga that Raymond Feist wrote himself. This series, the Empire trilogy that I'm reading right now, is set within that grand scope of Rift War. And Rift War is this series that was, I think, originally started being written in the 80s. And in general, it's this kind of old school sort of, has this, older fantasy feel to it, like Lord of the Rings-y type feel to it. And is essentially about a medieval setting with magic, and all of a sudden a portal opens up to another world that is humanoid but different, and they instantly come through and go to war with the people that are the stars of this book. And the war takes place both on that world and on the other world. And as the books go along, we have this, character multi-POV, jump into different people and go into different sides of this portal. And it's highly entertaining. And I've been exposed. And so this series takes place within that world. But it takes place on the other world and doesn't really have much to do with this battle going on, at least this first book. It's more about the internal politics and the Game of Thrones, if you will, and who will be in charge of these different houses in this other world. And there's references to this war going on, but it's a backdrop, and it's fun little Easter eggs, but nothing more than that. You wouldn't have to read the earlier books to have any less of an appreciation for what this book is. I also have been exposed to Janny Wurts. I read 2 Janny Wurts books, or 1.5. I read To Ride Hell's Chasm, I believe is the name of it, or I got most of those words right, maybe not all of them. And I thought it was a solid book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Really liked the writing. A couple weird plot choices for me that kept it away from being, a great book. But I felt like there was a lot of promise there to Janny as an author. I also read part of The Curse of the Mistwraith, which I did not like. Again, I thought the writing was very well done, but the plot kind of lost me, and I just wasn't feeling the direction and the tone of the book. But I still kind of felt like Janny as an author had something that I would really enjoy. And I don't know, I don't never do my homework on these books. I like to go into books pretty much blind. All I knew about this book going in, which is more than most books I read, was it's set within the Rift War. That's it. I had no other contextual information about this. So I don't know, like, how much did Janny write? How much did Raymond write? Did they split chapters? Did they combine on everything? Did one of them take the lead? Did one take the backup role? I'd be interested in reading about that now that I'm done. And if you know, let me know in the comments. But it feels like the best of both worlds. And, certainly it's my favorite book from either of them. And this is a bigger statement about Raymond Feist, because I've given 5s to his books. I think I gave a 5 to the initial book, Magician Apprentice. I might have given it to Magician Master as well. But I think the only 5 I gave was Magician Apprentice. This was far better than that. It was just wonderful. So I mentioned briefly the general plot of this book is, a war for houses, but more specifically, and I'll give you spoilers here for like the first chapter, and then I'll leave it from there. Probably less spoilers than you would get reading the back cover of this book. Probably far less. But right away, within the first few pages, you find out that this girl who is a young woman, like an older teenager or maybe mid-teenager. Her father, who runs who is like the leader of one of the greater houses in this world. So in this setting here, you have different houses vying for control, and they all have different power. You've got like 5 great families, and then you have families listed under them. He's probably like, 8th or 9th is my guess. Not one of the five leading people, but he's, pretty high up there in society. He is at war in the Rift War and in the other world. And him and her older brother both get betrayed by one of the other families. And it makes it look like they died naturally in this war, but in reality, they were backstabbed. And they both die, and she instantly finds herself leading this house. A house now that is going to be under siege, and so these other houses are going to come try to attack, take them down. They're weak, and the odds of them surviving this turmoil, especially with a young woman in charge in a very sexist society, is slim to none. And so what precedes is a book about this young woman taking charge and trying to outsmart everybody in this this battle, not literally battle with swords, but and although there is a very minor amount of that, but trying to politically maneuver the house in a way that can outsmart everybody and give them more power to the house. And essentially what we get is a book that is very reminiscent to me. I know this is a very weird comparison, but it felt like it had a lot of the same kind of arcs to it that something like a Pillars of the Earth had. Now, very odd that I'm comparing this book to a historical fiction book. But the things that I loved about Pillars of the Earth that I'm sure most people loved was this idea that you kept having this roller coaster of this major problem happens and we solve it and things calm down. And then a major problem happens and a big solution to it. And you get this constant roller coaster that's almost predictable in nature, but it's so constant that you just can't stop reading. It's exciting. And that's what you got here. Problem after problem after problem. And this girl trying to get out of it and trying to solve it and trying to get on top. And you kept constantly having that feeling of like triumph and sadness and going back and forth between these two emotions. And it's exquisitely done. I mean, I was so enraptured by this story and the character arc of this main character, and learning about the other characters, and you're so invested in the success that this girl has in trying to go forward. And I loved everything about it. It's got a very wonderful beginning, middle, and end. There's no part of this book that didn't have me on the edge of my seat. Even by the end of this book, I felt like this is a book that you could read both. I'm excited to keep going in this series, extremely excited. I can't wait to see where this goes. It's also a story, and this is rare, I feel like, increasingly rare, where you could read this first book and feel satisfied. If you're one of those standalone kind of readers, this is incredibly enjoyable, and it ends on a spot where you could be like, okay, I'm satisfied with the story. I don't have to keep going. Now, if you loved it like me, I need to keep going. I can't wait to find out where things go. But I love when series do that. When you can, you don't, it makes it so like you have no idea where the story is going to go, because it feels like things got kind of solved. And that's how Rift War did it as well, quite frankly, because at the end of the first Rift War book, I was like, we've heard the story. What is possibly going to happen now? It had that spiritual likeness to Rift War, which was really fun that they were able to do that. And clearly, Raymond Feist had some influence on that part of the story. So, in terms of like the fantasy elements here, they're not incredibly heavy. I mean, we do have some it's more of like the characters themselves than any sort of like magic system or things like that. There's a little bit of it that shows up later on in the book. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. If you've read the Riftwar Saga, the magic here kind of carries over that we already know about these people, but it's a minor part. It's like one storyline right at the end. But other than that, it's about intrigue. But we also get some like these kind of like ant people moments of the story, which is one of the side stories that goes on. But other than that, it's just like a tone of the book. So very, I'd say, light to moderate on the fantasy elements, which worked well here. This is not a story that's supposed to be about entertaining you with a fun, Sanderson magic system. It's a story that wants you to figure out how somebody's gonna win, and it succeeds massively. The characters were excellently done. I mean, I feel like both of these authors on their own have written great characters, and so this is continues on that path. But I do love a book because it's not incredibly common in fantasy, at least the fantasy that I read, to have a really strong main woman character. And it was, I mean, she's great. I mean, truly great. I mean, in seeing how she starts and where she goes and in the depth of this character, it's an all-time great character, and I can't wait to read more. The plotting here was great. The world building was extremely well done. I mean, you're caught up in the politics here. You instantly understand what's going on, and in the weird rules of society and how they work, and you get these bad guys that are truly loathsome, but they also have like you understand kind of why they tick, and even though you don't agree with them, you get it, and that's great too about a bad character. I hate bad characters that are just bad for the sake of it, just inherently evil. You don't get too much of that here. You get characters that they're trying to win, and they're trying to do anything they can to win, and it makes sense. And from their perspective, this woman's probably evil herself, and so it's all about, we have the point of view of this person, and everyone's going to be painted this way, but you get it. It makes sense. So yeah, great character work. The prose is good, certainly above average, but nothing that's going to be like beautiful, flowery prose. You're not going to get any of that here. But, certainly above average. And yeah, so this is great. I feel like this is one of those booktube darling books. I feel like everybody on booktube loves this thing. I don't think I've ever heard somebody say like this was disappointing. Obviously that exists. This isn't a perfect 5-star book across the board on something like Goodreads or anywhere. That book doesn't exist. But some books I feel like in the fantasy booktube sphere are loved more than they are widely popular. Something like a Sun Eater comes to mind, where Sun Eater, I think, is increasing in popularity, but if you only watched like fantasy or sci-fi, booktube, you'd think it's one of the biggest series that's ever existed. And so something like this, I feel like everybody's read it. Everybody, for some reason, it works like that. But the people are right. In this case, a lot of times I disagree with the masses. I don't try to, but in this case, I can't help but just love it and agree with everybody that has some positive things. So yeah, I would encourage this book to pretty much everybody. I can't think of a type of person that probably wouldn't get some sort of enjoyment out of this. Again, they exist, but off the top of my head, I don't know who they are, because this kind of feels like it appeals to pretty much everybody. I mean, it's easy to understand, but has depth to it. There's darker moments to it. But it's not a dark book. You've got a protagonist you've got to cheer for, but it's not inherently good and evil. It just rides that balance really nicely between everything, and it's great. So check this one out. Hope you love it as much as me, and I can't wait to keep going in the series. So thank you so much for watching, and as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons: Amy, Alex P, Anna G, CJ, Doust, Darren, Daniel O, JD, Jerry, Jonathan, Josh, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, 𝐿, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Sydney Baker, Slay, Tahir, Wyatt, Anna, Blair, Bevan, Joe UK, Kat Mick, Marcus, Michael Sugarman, and Sky. Thanks for sticking to the end of this video, and if you want to watch some more content from my channel, click over here and I've got some good videos for you. Thanks so much.